I view Trailblazer as the companion piece to Space Park. It's lengthy, it's complex, and it even has its own annoying shortcut, but at least with this one I don't have to contend with janky hitboxes. Janky might be the operative word for Trailblazer in its entirety, honestly. What a sour note to start on for our journey into the top 20. Surely such a track would earn itself a lower ranking. Well, there can be beauty in imperfection, and Trailblazer just so happens to exemplify this. It's a track of two distinct halves. The first continues to draw comparisons to Space Park as it starts off by plunging deeper and deeper into a lunar canyon, though here it feels extremely claustrophobic. The track is broken up into multiple pieces, with small but crucial jumps between them. Landing your ship parallel with the track has always been a habit you want to get into, but you'll want to refine it to a razor's edge here, as any speed loss will stay with you all the way to the second half of the track. Before we get there, however, Trailblazer has the sheer gall to take Reactor's titular feature and make it its own, and I'm sorry to whoever needs to hear this, but this is so much cooler than Reactor. A sheer vertical climb right underneath this massive pylon, with flecks of energy bouncing off of it, and streaks of electricity jumping between conduits. It has an ethereal quality to it, almost as if you're ploughing through a starfield as you boost out of the darkness and into the light. It's no mistake the latter half of this track is so bright, and its corners are easy to spot. It's meant to be a reprieve from the section before. There's still a lot to overcome here, and it comes at you as soon as you're spat out of the portal. A 1-2 combination of corners before a 1-2 combination of jumps. The latter pair require confidence in your pitch control as you want to stay airborne as much as possible, but not so much that you miss the correct time to land. All too soon we're blasting off again, this time into the final sector, but I really wish we could spend more time in this crater. The open space and lack of structure beyond the track reminds us just how inhospitable a place we're in, and I'm a sucker for atmosphere. One more jump and you're on the home stretch. Unfortunately, this is where the shortcut comes into play. I'm not going to pretend that it isn't stressful, that an entire hot lap hinges on these last few seconds, nor am I going to ignore that I smacked Unmanned on the wrists for the same thing, but at least here the margins for error are a little bit more manageable. That's mostly down to being able to actually see where you're going before you commit to turbo boosting, but hey, I'll take what I can get. Trailblazer borrows a lot from its peers, and while this could have sacrificed its own identity, it ends up improving upon the things it borrowed from, and also has something unique to offer itself with the stretch across the lunar plains and the cumbersome but satisfying final jump. It's a jack of all trades, and a master of none, but it's still pretty damn good at those things. Us humans have always held fascination with the moon. Even though it's so far away, that big pale orb in the sky has generated countless stories, myths, and legends over the course of our history. It was only a matter of time really before we set foot on it, wasn't it? Redout is set some 500 years in the future, and considering some of the places we've seen already, the moon almost seems mundane by comparison. Indeed, with the amount of infrastructure we've seen on it through the other tracks, there's a feeling this place has lost some of its mysticism. I don't think Lunar Speedway is going to convince anyone otherwise. Even the inherent danger of this barren rock has been succeeded by humanity's own construction. You're more likely to crash because of the structures built here than anything else. Is this a low-key cautionary tale about the dangers of indiscriminate expansion? Maybe. Is this me looking far too much into things? Almost certainly yes, but after playing the game for this long, I've had plenty of time to think about it. Beyond bargain bin game theories, there are more obvious and appreciable details here on Lunar Speedway. Saying the visuals are great is an almost redundant statement in Redout, but guess what? The visuals are great here! Like Space Park and the entire moon complex really, the sun creates stark contrasts with its light and the shadows cast by the ridges and man-made structures on the surface, and helps make the venue more of an occasion than it actually is. We'll get to that. Another cool detail are these bars that go over the top of the track on a specific stretch of road. While hearing them rush by you is very satisfying, they also give you an oral warning of when to start turning for the next corner. With the speed you'll be going at, every little bit helps here. The final thing that makes Lunar Speedway cool is also perhaps the most obvious one. Rushing across the lunar surface, kicking up plumes of dust is a gimmick I wish more of the moon tracks capitalised on. Nothing changes mechanically, but it's merely the visual that makes the idea so appealing. Where once astronauts gingerly traipsed across the surface in moon buggies, now adrenaline junkies hurl across it in supersonic racing machines. Cathartic is definitely a word for it. It's also a good word to describe this track as a whole. Lunar Speedway isn't the most demanding of circuits, but it does find a nice middle ground somewhere in the realms of where Floating Falls is. With your full attention not required at all times, it enables you to stop and smell the flowers, so to speak. A lot of small details are here to enjoy, and it makes revisiting this track over and over again an easy prospect. Here's a 2-for-1 in speedways, and oh my god, it's an Alaska track in the top 20! A Ceres meta here! Talk about a unicorn! This short track will get you well acquainted with what this environment is all about, without being absolutely infuriating in the process. There aren't too many corners here, but most of them are out for blood. The fact the first 2 corners remain so difficult no matter how long you spend here is a large part of the track's appeal. The other part is the speed. Well, it'd be pretty lame if a track called Speedway didn't allow you to go fast, wouldn't it? Let's take it from the top then. The first 2 corners, and heck, the next 2 even, might as well make up the entire course with how much they'll impact your times. Their approach is different from one another too. You'll be screaming into the first corner, lose most of your speed, yet still be struggling to get the ship swiveled around for the second corner. You'll want to clip the apex of the third, so you can just slide out through the fourth and get the second boost of the lap in. Talking about these corners hardly compares to actually negotiating them, and you can get it wrong at just about every step of the way. The rest of the track is a joke comparatively, even though it has a half loop and a hairpin in it. The latter is about the only other interesting thing, since it's almost a 360-degree turn and will have you on the edge of your seat waiting to see the corner exit so you can launch out of it. Alaska Speedway, technically just called Speedway, but that's rubbish since there's 2 other speedways in the game, is as avert in name as all the other Alaskan tracks. Yet not only does it pick the easiest feature to make enjoyable, it also demands fine control at both high and low speeds if you truly want to go fast. Its challenge is front loaded, but the laps are short, so it doesn't exhaust either. A good track will have something for everyone, regardless of skill level, and in my mind, this is the only Alaskan track to realise this. Oh, sorry, that's not how we do introductions, is it? Let me do that one again. Welcome to the second volcano track on our ranking. Magmatic Chamber is this far down because, similar to Underground Tour, it's understated visually, but is an intense and ragged track. The way in which it presents itself as such is more entertaining than its brother as well. Allow me to explain. Okay, I'll stop. But if you think this spiral is the wildest part of the track, then you're in for a rude awakening. The spiral might end in a physical sense, but you're going to keep tumbling down one as this lap progresses. Our next obstacle is a series of corners that seem to be designed by committee to inconvenience you as much as possible. Exit from this right hairpin is made difficult by the wall jutting out here. The sudden dip in the road will nip at your hull, and then the flip-flopping camber changes will confound you. The track seems to know it's trying your patience at this point, which is why it lets you cut loose with the second straight of the track. And I mean, what do you want me to say about this? You're not on a track at this point, you're on a wall, and you're merely a couple of feet above the magma. Do I really need to explain why this is cool? It'd be funny if the developers had omitted barriers here, but for better or for worse, they only do that at the end of the straight. Cutting the apex of this corner is like taking on a dare every lap, because if you get it wrong, you're going to slip under the track and get well acquainted with the volcanic rock. But taking it is necessary to give you the angle to dig deep into the hairpin and get a good exit. You get a breather, a very brief breather, before you're launched up a loop and catapulted off of it and into a corner where you'll scrub off speed no matter what, so you might as well make as much head with the landing as the kill plane will allow. But this is only half the story. The other reason why Magmatic Chamber appeals is that it's one of those rare survival tracks that are actually fun to play. This track is already a tough cookie on its own, but with these mines littering the track, the frantic qualities of it ascend to a whole new plane of adrenaline-fueled twitchiness. Cohen's the best ship here, partly because of just how much of a beating that hull can take, but if you want the most fun here, then get on Lunar and yell every time a mine looks at you funny. To summarise then, Magmatic Chamber is a track you survive, regardless of whether or not you're playing the game mode, and that severity meshes very well for a venue hosted inside a flippin' volcano. It can be a bit much sometimes, but when you're wired and want to push yourself, Magmatic Chamber will be waiting to receive you. Once upon a time, I ignored this track, yet after giving it a chance, it has charmed me in a way I would never have expected out of an environment like Vertex. Yet here we are. The reasons for why are pretty similar to Voxel. It's short, fast, easy to pick up, but unlike Voxel, there's a far greater focus on precision here. The race starts immediately with the loop, shock horror, but despite the name, the focus is absolutely not on it at all, but more the road afterwards. If you squint, it does sort of swing up and around back to the start, but if we're calling this a loop, then we can call a Serra a fast ship. Regardless of the specifics, this section is what makes the track for me. You'll be concerning yourself with landing in a way that your ship doesn't slide too much and lose speed, because you're going to need all of it plus interest for what follows. Your turbo boost and the boost pad should coincide with each other somewhat, as you'll be chucking yourself down a long stretch of road with scant few corners, but it is those corners that will make or break you. My fingers transform into the mandibles of a praying mantis so that I can nudge the sticks delicately enough to weave through the corners. Anything more than that is going to rack up a time loss, and it's very easy to do that. Now, for most people, the S's at the end of the track are the last reg the track throws at you, but for a Serra, it gets one extra thrown at it with this corner. You'll be boosting off the jump, and that's a lot of speed to be carrying into the corner, so you need to angle yourself just so that the wall bounce is more of a tap, really. Then we can actually deal with the S section, and yeah, it's definitely a prominent place to bottle your laps on, but strangely enough, cutting apexes in a racing game is fun, so it doesn't feel as bad as it is. Loop could be considered Voxel Plus, which is funny considering it's barely longer than it, but it does manage to be far more engaging than the few extra seconds of lap time would suggest. It's great for long stints in time attack, and even races as a test of consistency among the drivers. If you're like me and have been sleeping on this track, then wake up and give it a shot. Mountain Road is one of those rare tracks that are common. While the opening set of corners might be tough, they're all very low speed, so you can take your time getting used to them. Then a straight breaks up the action before you get another hairpin, and oh look! Another straight afterwards to stretch your legs further. From there, everything is telegraphed, so you can just cruise down by the sunny Italian coast and enjoy the view. Now the jump here certainly isn't relaxing, it's huge, and you can crash right into a bridge. Oh god, oh god, oh god, I need to pitch down! But as soon as you plunge into the water, it's calm again. A wide road will catch you and even use a large incline to slow you down and let you gather yourself. The clear waters immerse everything in a soft blue light. Now you can just bimble along to the finish. What a nice place this is. And then you get on the boil, and this track transforms. Now, these hairpins are the devil's work, here to strip away your speed at every turn. The corner before the straight seeks to do the same thing, but you've got places to be, you can't let it. Cut deep into the next corner, bounce, angle yourself well for the next straight. Now your micro steering will be tested as you try to carry as much speed as possible down the hill until you can boost again. Mind your pitch as the road starts to curve and twist up and around, and then launch yourself off the jump. Forget that target marker completely, that's only pointing out the slowest way to do this. You see that offshore wind farm? That's your target. When you land, you should be landing on the downward slope of this track, propelling you into the next corner. Then your final challenge before the finish will be to squeeze through the chicane as quickly as possible. Mountain Road is the Jekyll and Hyde of Redout tracks, no doubt helped by its early introduction in the career. At lower classes, and or when learned to play, it's a fairly forgiving track, whilst also preparing you for some wackier set pieces like the bridge jump. When you come back to it in Class 4 though, it takes on a form I find horrifyingly captivating. Earlier in this ranking, I mentioned that pipes had the potential to be fun, so it's my distinct pleasure to give to you the best pipe in the entire game. It also happens to be the biggest, by quite some margin. There's probably a correlation there. Opportunity is the third of the 5 Martian tracks, and it continues to capture the environment's lofty sense of scale, and mayhaps even do it the best. What can I say? The first jump is immense enough without the pipe, but Redout's never done anything by halves. You'll need to be mindful of your pitch. If you're too aggressive, you'll either crash or hit the lip of the pipe, which is just as bad in terms of maintaining speed. Too little pitch and you'll just be hanging in the air with a turbo ready to go. It's rare for a jump to be this involved, but I really enjoy the opportunity provided here. The rest of the track henceforth doesn't let up either, covering a lot of ground really rather quickly. The other thing I love here is this massive right-hander. It's so long that it's more than likely you'll be boosting through it at some point. For a Serra, that would happen to be near the start of it. Of course, steering quickly chips away at your speed, which would explain those boost pads lining the outside of it. The result of mixing these elements together is a turn that you're, I don't think there's any other word for it, drifting through constantly. Despite the floaty physics of the ships, drifting isn't a behaviour capitalised on very much by Redout, which makes this corner stick out like a sore thumb, and it's all the better for it. I absolutely adore this corner. It's the highlight of the entire circuit, which is really saying something when it has to compete with the best pipe in the entire game for screen time. If I take umbrage with anything here, it has to be this noodly section of road towards the end. The combination of turns and elevation changes make it feel almost like it's been procedurally generated. It leaves me struggling to find any nuance to it. The jump at the end feels disproportionately better just because it allows you to leave this rubbish behind, and I'm so glad of it that I'll even ignore the fact that this road has no hitbox. This is, ultimately, a small mark against the track. About the only small thing here, really. Opportunity is a roller coaster ride, and even has the tempo to match, with the track slowing down towards the end to wind up for another loop. It's not content to rest on its laurels of just being fast though, and has a pair of features that could truly be called unique, and that's what propels it to number 14 on the list. Once upon a time, I would have ranked Shipwreck as one of the 10 worst tracks in the game, but now it's just sitting outside the top 10 best. So why the drastic change in heart? Basically, I stopped whinging about Shipwreck, its cavalcade of harsh, low speed corners, the goddamn Soulhat MS meta. Okay, maybe I haven't stopped whinging about that one, and meta on my own terms. And you know what? It's really bloody fun. It's one of the longest tracks in the game, if not the longest, and spends its runtime brutalising you with square corners, hairpins and chicanes. There's very little risk of actually going off track and crashing, but Shipwreck doesn't need you to. While its name is an obvious reference to the fact that, well, you're racing inside a shipwreck, it's also an appropriate descriptor for what it'll do to your craft. Be careful not to join the graveyard. Doing a play-by-play of every single corner here would see me nattering on for an hour, so here are some personal highlights. This S section that can cost you a tenth or two if you take it poorly, and you'll know when you've done it right. The first jump of the lap, where you can stay in the air and help set up your angle for the succeeding chicane. This short, spiralling straight that terminates in a hard left turn. And the final hairpin and jump, which on pace requires you to boost onto the ramp below. It's easy to under or overcut it and kill all of your momentum. In the end, I've come to accept and appreciate Shipwreck for what it is, which is an oversaturation of square turns and tight bends to the point of comedy. It's ludicrous, and in accepting that, I have freed myself of any form of misery this track harboured. If you fancy yourself a master of Redout's controls, then visit this track in a Conqueror, without any grip power-ups, and put your money where your mouth is. All the pity I've had for Cairo feels pretty redundant now, doesn't it? Ghibli closes out the appearances for this environment, both in the career and this list, and it most assuredly goes out with a bang. The lower entry for this track mentions the Ghibli knot as one of its standout features, and that happily holds water in-game. Part loop, part bank turn, all challenge, pitch control will be essential to preserve your speed while you try to wrestle the ship as cleanly through the turn as possible. The other thing Ghibli is known for is its back straight, which isn't so much a track as it is a pair of barriers covering the world's longest long jump. In other words, there's a lot of sand. Between that, the Sulha track meta, and the sheer speed of it, this is most assuredly pod racing. That must be why I like this part so much. Between the knot and the back straight, and beyond them really, there's a few technical sections, but nothing is truly slow here in Ghibli. It's a track that flows really well, from start to finish, save perhaps for the final turn, where the optimal route is to cut it as much as possible and suffer a speed killing wall bounce. It'd be better if there was something in the way of that cut, a kill plane, or say, how about you drag those pyramids over here? This is wishful thinking though, and as such, Ghibli just misses out in the top 10. Still, it manages to find this Goldilocks-like combination of being accessible, yet challenging enough to keep all sorts of players entertained. Pile a stunning backdrop and good music on top, and you've got yourself a great time. The vibe is different here at Fingertips. We've already seen two volcano tracks that are entirely underground, and that did a lot to make them the close, hectic experiences that they are. Here, we actually get to see some daylight, which might make you think there'll be more breathing room here, doubly so as this is the first volcano track you'll encounter. But no, all of that scenery is just to give you an alternative backdrop as you crash and slam about the course. Redout enjoys a progressive difficulty curve for the most part, and the first jump here is a physical representation of that curve. It's very easy to overshoot it and be collected by the kill planes, so you're going to learn about the importance of pitching down whether you like it or not. The rest of the track provides a similar level of challenge as you go along, with continuous turns, awkward jumps, sections of roads without barriers, and other classic hallmarks of track design. This melting pot of features results in a lengthy and varied track, and they all hold up well under my scrutiny. Like an expertly cooked dish, not one of these ingredients overpowers the other. They all have their place here and feel equally as characterful. There's no part I truly dislike, but if I have to pick, I like the middle section the least. It's a bit clumsy to get around, but I suspect that's intentional when I consider how fluid the rest of the track is. It's there to stop the track from being a bit one note. On the flip side, my favourite sequence comes shortly after. Boosting towards the loop is fun, but it's boosting off of it that's the real treat. A little bit of pitching is required for the best landing, and as soon as you hit the ground, you're given another burst of speed thanks to a boost pad. The blind corner after, and its barrier have haunted me for much of my Redout career, but now they're easily judged, which is good since it's the last major place you can lose lap time to. The corners following it are easy to get around, and the straight before the final corner is immersed in water, as if the game is literally allowing you to cool off after an intense lap. Fingertips is about as serene as Volcano gets, which is to say, it's still a wild and demanding experience by the standards of any other environment. While there's a literal disconnect between it and the other tracks here, since it never actually goes inside a volcano, the alternative backdrop offered up here is just as appealing, and it certainly doesn't dilute the phenomenal driving experience here. It was an instant hit with me from the first race, and it will remain a favourite with me all the way until my last. Well, the last part of this series just blew up. Oh my god. As ever, thank you all so much for watching, whether you're a regular or you've just stumbled onto this channel for the first time. In either case, I do hope you'll stick around, even after this series concludes. There's plenty more that I want to do, both in Redout and beyond it. With that in mind, feedback's always appreciated to better improve my content. Links to get more involved with Redout can be found in the description, but that's it for now. I'll be seeing you soon for the concluding part of my Redout ranking.